So we're going to go ahead and talk about the property of triangles today. One of the most important things to talk about with triangles is this fact that they are similar to each other. Now, the word similar has a very special meaning when we're talking about this. If I am talking about this angle here, we'll go ahead and just call it x for right now. No matter the size of the triangle, I can have one a lot larger, or I can have one a lot smaller. Those three triangles that you have there are all similar, and the value of x stays the same for all of those triangles. Now, when we're starting to talk about trig, the idea about trig is that we're going to use some functions, and those functions are called the sine of an angle, the cosine of an angle, and we're going to start with talking about the tangent of this angle. Now, the interesting thing about the study of right triangles and the study of trig is that the ratio of the legs of the triangle are always the same. So let's go ahead and call and label some of these pieces. So if I'm going to go ahead and talk about angle x means the measurement of this angle here. Now, inside this triangle would be considered a leg. All of these over here are also would be legs of that same triangle. This here in all three of these triangles are right angles, which tells us that directly across from all of these in this direction for all of them is the hypotenuse. Now, something interesting about when we label these, when you are labeling a triangle, let's say I have this triangle here, that angles are always going to be capital letters. You can call this angle C. Then this angle here would be referred to as C. If I call this B, this angle here would be referred to as angle B. This is 90 degrees. Now, when you're naming these triangles, this is angle B. Directly across from B would be considered leg, but that leg has a lowercase letter. Directly across from C would be leg C, and again, this would be lowercase. And if, let's also give the right angle a letter, we're going to go ahead and call that A, and then the hypotenuse in this case would be A. We're now going to move on and talk a little bit more about what all of this means. So what we're talking about here is, first we're going to go with the word sine. Now the sine of any angle, and right now we're just going to go ahead and call that x, and this is abbreviated just sin, so that's sine, it's and still pronounced that way. The sine of any angle is equal to the opposite side over the hypotenuse. Now this is true for any triangle that is similar, any triangle that has that triangle of x. So if I'm going to shrink this down a little bit so I can get this all on the same page. So what that means is this sine is a function, the same way you have a square root function or a log function. The sine is a function, but it's a very specific meaning, and that meaning is the ratio between the angle, which is the angle that I have right here, and that ratio is always going to be the opposite over the hypotenuse for all three of those triangles, or for any triangle that we have. The next trig functions we're going to talk about is the cosine, and the cosine has a similar relationship, only that one is called the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Now, the word adjacent just means that it is touching that particular angle. So if I go ahead and look back at my triangle, I can see that in relationship to angle X, this side right here is the adjacent side, and the hypotenuse is this side. And that's true whether it's for the red triangle, the one in the middle, or for if it is for the outside green triangle. It would cover the entire thing. All of those ratios would be the same. The last trig function that we're going to talk about here would be considered the tangent, and that is abbreviated as TAN. And that tangent of X is a little bit different. It is always going to be the opposite over the adjacent. Many of you may have already heard of the abbreviation SOHCAHTOA. So SOHCAHTOA stands for the sine is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And the tangent is equal to the ratio of the opposite over the adjacent. Now, it's really important to remember this is only for triangles that have this right angle. The next video, I'll go ahead and solve some of these triangles with your calculator.